prove that it is. And that's the default assumption. And so science is naturally conservative in that regard because there's so many claims that are made, most of which are wrong. You have to assume it's not true and then go from there.
La clonación, aparte de que representa un avance tecnológico muy importante, bueno, científico más bien, creo que puede ser muy útil para salvar vidas, para mejorar la condición de vida, pero también que viola muchos valores morales.
Clonar a un humano se me hace algo tonto, ya que pues con los mismos pensamientos que nosotros tenemos hacia la gente, imagínate un clon que piensa igual que nosotros. Y en los animales creo que también se me hace una tontería, ya que para eso existe la naturaleza tal cual.
Para mí la clonación es algo positivo siempre y cuando se utilice en aspectos científicos que beneficien al ser humano.
S. T, V, W, X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Could be C or could be CH.
I don't have any problems with cloning because we already accept identical twins as having two separate identities, two souls, if you believe in souls, or metaphorically speaking, there's two individuals there. And so the fear people have is that we will make parts out of a clone. Well, that's already against the law, so you can't do that. Or somebody would want to have themselves cloned. But surveys show that almost nobody wants to do that. Really, the reason I encourage research into cloning is because it can lead to medical technologies to solve genetic diseases, and the lead to the creation of stem cells and things like that. Well, again, that's part of our nature to selfishly see if we can get away with something and try to violate social norms in a selfish way that gives us a little bit of an edge over our competition. So if it's a game in which there's parameters and rules and so on, in order to prevent cheating, you have to have strict enforcement of the rules. Rules have to be really clear and strictly enforced with strong punishments. And then people won't cheat. It's only when you don't have a rule of law in a society, or you don't have a clearly defined set of rules in a game, like baseball, for example, that you can or can't use this performance-enhancing drug, then that's when the cheating happens. Because like in a game theory model where the whole point is to win, so if one person starts to do this, cheat a little bit and gets away with it, then everybody else has to do it in order to keep up, and then the whole thing falls apart. Self-deception is part of human nature, yeah. But the whole point of the scientific method and the peer review system is that if you don't find and catch your own lies, somebody else will. Okay. And usually with great glee in a public forum to expose you, because science is a very competitive enterprise. And so if you can knock somebody down by showing that they're wrong or self-deceived, then that's even better for you. So there's a kind of ethic in science that forces you to look for your own self-deceptions and biases and agendas.
I will go now with the letter E, F, G, H, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, V. Okay, D.
Well, voodoo science is just another way of saying junk science or pathological science or bad science or pseudoscience. It's just another way of describing when science goes wrong. So it's not exactly like the paranormal. It's that somebody's making a claim that has a scientific basis to it, or it sounds like it's supposed to be scientific, and when you look into it, it isn't. And so like cold fusion is an example of science gone bad. Cold fusion, the claim was made in a press conference before there was any experimental corroboration by other laboratories that cold fusion was real. And so as soon as it was announced, then other labs tried to replicate the results, couldn't replicate it, and that was the end of that. So cold fusion became an example of voodoo science or bad science.
Well, here we also have B y W, W.
Well, this is mostly an American thing because race is a big culturally sensitive issue here. It isn't a big issue in other countries. And it has to do with, I think, our past and also the natural human tendency to, the tribal tendency to group people into different categories. And we do this anyway, even if there were no racial differences. But skin color differences are really easy to see. So it's easy to catalog people and then differentiate them hierarchically, such that some are better than others.
Is there a myth that, for example, in basketball, most of the best players or the best runners are Afro-Americans?
Well, in basketball, it used to be, before blacks got into the sport, it was the belief that Jews were better. Jews were somehow innately superior at basketball because of their cunningness. And that, that was sort of a way of isolating Jews and separating them. Then when blacks got into it, then it became sort of a black sport. Now what's happening is that there's Asians, Chinese, and Eastern Europeans are getting into the sport, and now the sport is shifting again. There's different styles of play. So it's not that one is better than the other.
I will do a little bit of cheating, talking about cheating, because this topic relates me with another one, yes, that I was reading in this book, The Borderlands of Science, which has to do with another myth, and it's the Mozart genius myth.
Well, what I call the Mozart effect is that somehow creative genius comes from on high, like a spark in the brain. A light bulb goes off from somewhere else. That's in some way inexplicable by the normal means of how the rest of us go about becoming accomplished in something, just hard work and practice. And the myth is, I'm busting that myth by saying, no, actually, if you look at Mozart's own life, yes, of course he's naturally gifted, but that he had an extensive background in music. His father was a musician. His whole social circle were musicians. He started writing and playing music at the age of 3. So by the time he became famous in his late teens, he had already had 15 years of practice. That's a lot. So I call this the 10,000 hour rule, that you have to put in, it takes about 10,000 hours to master a new skill. If you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, a scientist, whatever, that's 10,000 hours. That's about what it takes to train.
I will choose another one that for me has to do a lot with the question of God. I don't remember exactly where I put it, but I would like to, I think it was here.
You can just ask me.
Yes, perfect, sure, you're right. It is actually this one. God, I mean, there is a big debate. We're inviting you to debate actually at Idea City. I hope Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris could help us. And you two against other two great thinkers at the idea of God, the question of God. What's the debate about?
Well, on one level, the debate's about the nature of reality. Is there actually a God or not? And if there is, what's the evidence for it? What are the claims that people make for God's existence? And then we debate that. The other part of the debate, though, is belief in God. Why do people believe in God? Why does anybody believe in God? Is it in our genes? Is it in our evolutionary heritage? Is it just in our culture? Why do people believe, in God? So those are sort of the two levels of the debate. I'm a skeptic. I'm a religious skeptic. I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist.
I am a religious skeptic.
A religious skeptic, yeah.
Are you an atheist or you are no-teísta?
Yeah, well, as a statement about the universe, I'm an agnostic. That is, it's not knowable. There's no scientific experiment we're ever going to run to settle the issue. Simply because God, the conception of God that most people have is that it's a supernatural entity. And if it's supernatural, then the natural sciences can't really know God. That's why they're called the natural sciences. Yeah. Okay, so that sort of ends the debate right there.